Hi, and welcome to RealClearFetish Talks RealClearPlay, a podcast that dives into kink life and sober life and everything in between. This week we are on the blue couch again. Unfortunately, also the last time we're on the blue couch because I'm moving yet again. But this week we're of course in my home, and this week I have Mark with me. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Yeah, great.
Good.
Great. Thank you for coming.
That's okay.
You came all the way from Scotland.
Yep.
So, like with every episode, I start with 4 standard questions, and then we'll just see where the conversation goes.
Okay. Good.
So, what do you prefer? I call you, name, pronouns, and title.
Prefer boss as a title, and Mark if it's non-kink, and then he, him.
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about myself. So, I live in Scotland, but I'm English. So, lived there for 3 years. Originally born South London. A lot of my formative years around London, the London kink scene, then got married, moved out to the Shires and lived there for quite a few years, about 13, 14 years. Then my partner passed away and then moved to Manchester to get away and then moved on to Scotland.
So you kind of like...
Been everywhere.
Been everywhere. And my condolences on your partner. We'll get a little bit more into that a little bit later on. Completely sober, clear-headed, or social drinker?
Social drinker. Social drinker. But I don't take it to... My younger years took it to extremes, and it's not nice recovering. So, and I can socially drink, and I can have 1 or 2 drinks, and that's it. I'm done.
So all in measured.
Oh amount. Yeah, very, very, very measured. I mean, people can. I don't like if someone wants to have a drink, great. But and someone doesn't want to have a drink, that's fine by me as well. It's like I drink to make myself just enjoy myself, and then 2 drinks, and I'm kind of done anyway. So
yeah, cool. What is clear play to you, and why is it important?
Clear play to me is I want to remember what I've done. And I did fall into that, especially in my younger life, going to play sessions and there would be the drugs around. And it's like, yeah, let's do it because everyone else is doing it. And after that, I got to a certain point where I thought, what am I doing to myself? And I started to get concerned because I kind of like started off as everyone does, like a little bit of K, a little bit of this, a bump of this. It'll be a good evening. And then I kind of like gravitated and started getting into the harder stuff. So you're talking like crystal meth and things like that. And it's like, oh, okay, you're smoking it, great. Wonder what it's like to inject it. And then you inject it, and then your day kind of like gets controlled by the drug. Like you wake up, oh, I'll have a smoke just to get myself back to a level.
Yeah.
And then, perhaps if I inject a little before I go out, I'll be fine for the day. And it's like, it's just a slippery slope. And it is difficult because people like, I can handle addiction. I can do this. But crystal meth is a very, very addictive drug, and it's hard to break. It's one of those drugs, it's hard to break the addiction.
Oh, even after 7 years of sobriety now, I can be quite triggered or have days where I have euphoric callback, especially from memories from injecting, because it's so powerful.
Oh yeah.
It's very hard to kind of measure to anything else.
It is.
And that's why people fall so quickly when they go over to that side of doing it. And I think it's very important we use the word injection and not slamming, because that is very much romanticizing it. It is. It's not dirty or worse or anything than anything else you're injecting.
Yeah.
It's just, I think we have a very good way of putting a rose-tinted glass on something where actually that is dangerous. That is something with needles and so on. But it's very tricky.
And I mean, I'm at the stage now, it's like, if people want to do it, I don't have a problem with that, but it needs to be measured. And someone says, oh, we're having a slam session. Instead of like being triggered by it, I'm like, yeah, no. I've been to that position, and no, it actually makes me feel sick now, because I've got to the point where it took some time to get over it. But if someone mentions it now, I come over like, yeah, no, it's not for me. I'd rather be clear, enjoy what I do, and remember it a better way from a session.
It's tricky because you want to have a sex life and go out and so on, but it's also, if you choose to be sober, especially on the gay scene, sometimes one time out of three, it will be someone doing drugs.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you kind of like, okay, I can't do those sessions, so we'll just have to move on from that. A lot of people are quite understanding, and they're just so on and so forth. Some people don't understand or know, but that's normally when they're high, so they're not fully there.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's a hard one to kick.
It is, and it took me until recently, I'd say until about 2020, 2021 to actually, I kind of like stopped about 2015, and it took me till 2020 to actually stop putting it to the back of my mind and actually cope and get over what I'd put myself through, and actually kind of like, as I say, refile it in my head into I can actually think about it without actually saying, no, don't think about that, put it to the back of your mind.
Yeah, it's literally have to do a physical or internal physical
Yes.
action about what you're thinking about. I'm still at that stage where if for example we start to keep talking about this and go into details, that would be triggering to me eventually.
Yes.
And that would linger afterwards as well. Not that I'm saying we shouldn't talk
No.
about it, but it's just like, I sometimes when I talk to people and they really go into the nitty-gritty details about it,
Yeah,
I'm just like, I want to listen, but I'm getting a bit uncomfortable.
Later on, it's going to still be lingering in your mind. I'm like that as well. It would be like a few hours later, my mind would go, hi, I'm remembering this now, and I'm like, I'm a bit triggered at the moment. Yeah, no, shh, go away.
and I think it's important when you get to that point where you have those triggers or euphoric callbacks, and as they're also called, but they can be very powerful. There's no shame in it.
No.
And I think what is always really important when that happened is to vocalize it.
Oh yeah.
It's like, okay, this is where my brain is going. If you have like, now I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to people who are listening or watching. It's like, if you do experience that, have a confidant you can be open and honest with. And I think that's really important. I have people I can go to. For example, I mentioned this is the last time we're on this couch. This period has been very stressful because I have to move house in the new year after already moving once this year. And I've had times, not to the extent I want to do it, but where I'm just like, ooh, a drink could be really good right now.
Yeah.
Just to kind of just take that edge off of the anxiety and the uncertainty. I allow my brain to do that because I talk about it and I'm open about it. I'm not perfect. I'm not infallible when it comes to my recovery.
Yeah.
If I let stuff linger, that builds up to something and then it might happen.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's the same for me. It's like someone will go, oh, if we play, I might do drugs. I'm like, you can do that, but that's not for me. So, and then sometimes my brain will go, well, and at that point I'm like, no, we're not going down that road. I don't want to remember those things. And it's that part of the addiction that's like re-triggering you to go, well, you could, but it's like, no, let's not do that.
Yeah, it's when I've talked to people, I'm not saying I haven't played with people who are high. If I'm in a club, so on, as long as they're somewhat there.
Yes.
Because there is this blurred line of, are they actually there?
Yes.
And then are they actually consenting to what we're doing?
Yeah.
So we kind of I have to measure that when I'm playing with someone. Almost, I turn away from who are more drunk.
Oh yeah.
That's almost like worse in a club situation, to be honest.
Yeah.
When they're drunk, if they're a little bit tweaky, fine, but it's not often that happens.
Yeah.
When it's in a club. It's like heat of the moment kind of thing. I don't seek them out, and I think that's very important.
Yes.
I think a lot of people when, for example, going out, you kind of have to go, okay, what is my intention tonight?
Mm.
And that's okay. If you feel like your intention is not to be good
Mm.
and you want to be tempted, maybe don't go out.
Yeah, no, you're right with that.
So you are London born and bred.
Yep.
Yeah. So when did you start going out on the kink scene?
When did I start going out on the kink
Way,
scene?
way back.
Let's. We got a time machine. Let's go backwards. For me, it started around the late 80s, the early 90s. So we're talking about HIV, big explosion, HIVs, when like the AIDS stuff started to kick off. We're talking about if you were watching it on TV, it would have been It's a Sin. And for me, that was kind of like my formative years started by actually going Time Out magazine. There used to be a group, probably not there now, that used to meet at someone's flat, and then you'd go out into town as a group of gay people to help you introduce people to people, because back then there was kind of like no internet didn't exist. It was like you had like personal ads and like ads like, we're a group of gay guys, we meet up, we have a drink, and then we go out and drink in town.
People actually used to meet each other when
Yes.
they go out. By the way, it's not all online for anyone listening.
Yeah, this was before the internet actually came in, and actually even before even like text messaging existed as well. You'd get magazines where you'd actually call a number, leave someone a message, and they'd call you back and go, oh, let's go meet. That's how hookups started way back then. And that was kind of like my introduction into like the gay scene of going out into Soho and going to Compton's, and then but also going out to Brompton's and everywhere like that. And that was kind of like my introduction into the scene. And then from there, obviously I found Brompton's and things like that, and then that's when my
Can you explain what Brompton's is? If
Brompton's
no one knows what that
used to be like a kink bar, so it was like very into like leather and things like that. So a lot of people used to go there, and a lot of famous people used to go there, like Jean-Paul Gaultier and people like that. So, and I only know that because my best friends like met Jean-Paul Gaultier in Brompton's once.
I've seen him on Backstreet as
yes.
well. Yes.
So, and that was my introduction into kink, and then that started my like, interesting. I want to find what this is about. And then that developed into finding, there used to be a kink bar called The Block. It used to be in Islington, and then it moved out into Bromley by Bow. And that was my introduction to the kink scene and getting into like, what am I interested in? Ooh, this is leather. Ooh, this is rubber. Fisting. Ooh, what is this? That was my introduction into the kink scene. And then developing on from that, I was in like a very like standard vanilla relationship, and I was living with them in Essex. I was like, I'm into kink. And I ended up going out. I was kind of like, my relationship was a bit rocky because I was doing everything and my partner was just literally just spending the money. So I earned, they spent, and it's like, this is becoming unsustainable. So I went out one day and I actually went into Compton's, and I don't know if it still exists. There used to be an evening called London Reds.
No, I've never heard of it.
Okay, it was a fisting group, and they used to meet. I can't remember when, but they used to meet on a certain day, and they'd meet at a certain London venue, and it was just for people into fisting. And I'd been chatting to a guy, and I promised to meet him there. And I'd literally gone into Compton's because I was kind of wasting time to go to that venue to meet him. And I'd had a quite a bit of drinks, so I kind of like went to the loo, went for a pee. I didn't realise that a guy had already gone in there, and I have a very big bladder, so it takes me some time to pee at a urinal. People think that I'm standing there like trying to like get someone to come on to me, and it's like, no, large bladder, I'm having a pee. And obviously this guy was at the other end of the cubicles, and he's kind of like obviously waiting for me to finish peeing and finish peeing. So I kind of like finished and shook off and went to wash my hands. And as I was getting ready to go, kind of like just tapped me on the shoulder, because I was actually flying red on the left.
Oh.
And he went, "Hi, here's my number. I fly red on the right." And he just gave me his number. This is how we used to do it back in the day. Giving each other telephone numbers and say, "Call me, I like you."
Yeah.
No internet back then. So, and gave me his number. And I thought, okay, great. Put it in my pocket. Went about my business. And I'm like, interesting. So gave him a call and we hooked up, and it kind of like happened from there really, and ended up getting to know him. I went to London Reds again. I met the guy that I was meeting the first time, met up with him again. But then when I met with him again, the guy that gave me his number was at London Reds as well. And he was kind of like a bit jealous that I was there with that guy, and kind of like our relationship kind of like developed from that.
And that was
that was my first husband.
Your first husband. And how long were you together before you passed?
About 14 years.
14 years.
Yeah.
And I've already asked this question before I asked the question, because I wanted to clear with you if you were comfortable. So he passed away.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, this is where it's a thing where a lot of people think they can do solo breath play. And obviously, when you are a kinkster, there's different kinks, and breath control. A lot of people practice it, which is great. I'm an advocate of please always do it with someone. My partner decided to do it alone. And they obviously did what they did, took a little bit of ketamine, whatever, thought they'd have a play at home. And I was actually in work, and I'd actually spoke to them about 9 o'clock, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, fine. Yeah, I'll see you when I get home," and whatever. And I actually arrived home, and the house was a little bit quiet, but my dinner stuff was on the side for me to do dinner when I got home. And I'm like, very quiet. So I kind of like went upstairs, and they were kind of like laying on the bed, sleep sack with the gas mask on. And I'm like, hello, no. And they were actually, from the time I'd actually spoken to them, they decided to have a play. And just, if you go out in town, you know, the little nitrous oxide cylinders, they get cream whippers. They was obviously using that, and they just dosed too much and just fell asleep and never woke up.
Yeah,
just passed away. So that's why I'm a big advocate of, if you're going to do breath control, don't do it alone.
Yeah,
because you might think that you can control what you're doing. You can't, because it's an unknown factor. And also, if you're going to involve drugs, you're going to involve nitrous oxide. These things are dangerous, and they're dangerous for a reason. And people need to be careful and need to know that these type of things can happen, and they happen far too often.
It does. And in the time I've been in the kink scene, I've definitely heard stories of other people where they're just mishaps. Sometimes not even alone.
No.
Just, you have to really think things through, especially when we're talking about restricting airways.
Yes.
And mixing with other things. I saw someone online post a picture of them in a gas mask with the tube, but then submerged in water.
Yes.
Hog-tied. And I just wrote to them, it's like, that is really dangerous. I really hope the one you were with were really experienced. Because if you pass out, you're dead weight.
Yes.
You won't be able to get you out unless you're really strong. And it turned out the person he'd been doing it with was also a new beginner.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I don't want to sound like your dad telling you off, but you have to be so careful.
I've been around long enough to say I feel like I'm like an elder statesman. But I've experienced enough to have that point of view. It's like, please be careful, that's dangerous. And I speak via experiences. It was a horrible thing. It kind of like self-destructed my life at that point, to find like the person you wanted to grow old with was literally no longer there.
Yeah.
And also, because it was late in the evening, like basically, obviously, I called 999. luckily where I was living, I had two friends down the end of the road, and they worked in A&E at the local hospital. So I'm like talking to 999. They're trying to tell me to stay with them, but I'm like, I've got two people down the end of the road who are experienced and know what they're doing. I'm getting them. And then obviously you have to call, right? The ambulance gets called, then police get called. And at that point, after everything, my partner got taken away, I was literally evicted out of my house for that night because the police treated it as suspicious death because someone's died alone. So literally I was locked out of the house for the night. The worst thing the next day was then having to call my partner's parents to tell them that basically their son was dead. That was the most horrible thing I'd ever had to do in my life, and I wouldn't want anyone else to have to try to experience that.
No,
it's not an easy thing.
No, and I can imagine the aftermath of something like that must be harrowing. Kind of like having to kind of like accept this has happened. And I was about to say maybe the sadness also mixed with some anger.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
mixed with everything, to be honest. Because then after that, when the next day, obviously, then the police like come round to investigate what's gone on, and then having to explain kink to two people that like what's this? Yes, that's a dildo. That's a sleep sack. That's a gas mask. What that's for? Oh, that's for making yourself high. It's difficult to explain, and you've then got to. Sometimes kink's difficult to talk about, especially to people that don't have a clue what kink's about, and you've got to explain that, and then you're kind of like, okay, that's fine. We'll take all this stuff away, and then it goes to an inquest because person died alone, and then that gets printed in the paper, and like people are like reading what's happened, and it's like it's hard to explain to people. And after that point, it's when the police call and go, oh, you can now collect all the possessions and everything. It's like, do I really want to collect something that helped cause my partner's death?
Yeah, it's tough. And I think it's one thing the accident happened, but then there's all the aftermath afterwards. And also all of a sudden you feel like they think it's suspicious, so they kind of take you into account, and that is literally the last thing you want to think about at that point. Where it's like, oh, okay, well, no, I had nothing to do with this. It's a horrible accident.
It is. It was. That's the thing. It was a horrible accident, and that's why breath control, okay, but be careful if you're doing it with other things, especially with drugs and especially with nitrous oxide. It is a dangerous thing. You might feel you're getting a bit of a buzz. One time you might do it and that buzz might be a bit too much and you're not going to wake up from it.
And that's why you also see it with other drugs like GHB. You can pass out on that so easily and your heart can stop. And it's so dangerous. And the amount of times I passed out on that, luckily enough, I had people around me in most cases.
To keep you awake,
Well, yes, or it cooled me down because I'm overheating. If you love rubber, that's fine. But if the idea is, oh, I really love sleeping in it, make sure you're cool. Because if you're sleeping and you overheat, you're not waking up again.
No.
And we've seen that in the past as well with other people where they pass away really young. So it's safe practices are you always have to kind of be a couple of steps in front of what you're doing. It's like, okay, if this happens, then we need to have that ready.
And that's why I'm kind of like, I'm at that stage now. If I'm going to be doing something, my brain's 3 steps ahead, thinking of, okay, if we're going to do this, we need to kind of be prepared 2 steps along as to if something's going to happen or something.
So did it make you reevaluate some of the fetish practices you had yourself? Or did it take some time to kind of go, okay, I need a break from this?
It took some time, but the problem is, I think that's where I ended up on the slippery slope of like, a little bit of crystal meth will help take my mind off of it. And if I smoke this, it will give me that euphoric feeling and not make me feel crappy. So, and that was, for me, that was kind of like the slippery slope it put me under. And I felt like doing that was taking my mind away from it and taking it off of having to think about it.
It's funny, I've heard other people where they either lose a partner and then they get into drug addiction afterwards, because all of a sudden there's not a safety net. I don't know always the situation of why the partner's either left or passed away, but it's not an unheard story to me. So you kind of slipped into doing crystal meth, injecting as well. When did you get to a point where it's like, enough?
I got to a point where I was living with I found a new partner, and was living with, what got to one point where I was still doing it, but I was still doing it too much. And they were like, you kind of like need to stop doing this. And that was kind of like a bit of a kick realization for me. And I kind of like contacted a local drug service and said, look, I'm having problems. And I kind of like went along to them, and they tried to help. They tried to do their best, but when I mentioned crystal meth, they're like, "What's that?" Because it wasn't so prevalent, and they're like, "We don't know what this drug is." And I'm like, "Well, it's very prevalent down in London. It's making its way up to here," but they helped me think about what I was doing, and at that point, it was like, I do really, really need to stop doing this, because it's either going to get worse, or one day is my heart going to explode or something like that. It's like, I need to consider my health. So it was hard to begin with, because it's like, ooh, I've got a bit of meth downstairs. I could just go do that. But it's like, no, try to do other things to take your mind off of it. And it's hard to begin with. It takes time to build your confidence back up, but also you have to process the reason why you were doing it in the first place.
And the reason surrounding your use was devastating, and there's a lot of things to sort through. I think anyone kind of like who knows your story was like, I get it. I would probably have been the same. The thing with addiction is a lot of people is like, they don't understand what an addiction is. And an addiction is a symptom. It's a symptom of something else that's wrong. With me, it was self-medicating with my ADHD. I now know it's there, and I know how to tackle it, mostly. Not always perfectly. Yours came from extreme sadness. I think that's where someone who's not experienced addiction, that is maybe where they can sympathize. They will never. I think a lot of people who never experience addiction will not be able to empathize. They'll be able to sympathize with the reason.
But I could actually say that, because to me, myself, in my brain, I'm like, I'm a strong-willed person. I don't think I'll be addicted, but I did become addicted. You think that you've got the willpower to control it yourself, but when you're in the midst of it, you don't. You really, really don't have the power to stop it. You're just like, oh, I'm a strong-willed person. I think I can cope with addiction. No, it doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
Did you stop from one day to another, or did you have like stumbles and so on and so forth?
I didn't stumble. I went cold turkey. If I make a decision about something, I will do it. And I found it hard. There was times that I thought I could really, really do some now, but I'm like, but I've stopped. Why do I want to do it? So I went hard cold turkey with it. And even to this day, sometimes it'll come to my mind and go, ooh, and I'm like, no, that's not happening today. I have things to do, and I've come so far along in this journey. Why throw all of that away?
It's tough.
It is.
And I definitely have days like that where it's very loud. As secure I feel in my sobriety, sometimes if someone asks me the questions, like, I have this, I don't know if it's the wrong day.
Yeah,
I may not have the strength to say no. And that is the fact of addiction.
Yes.
This is why you try to safeguard yourself. This is why you don't put you in situations where, for example, going to someone's house where you know they're high and there's going to be stuff there.
Yeah.
I've been in situations where I've stayed with friends where I knew where their stash was. No issue with my friend, but I was just like, I should not know where that is.
Yeah.
Maybe if I come again, don't tell me where it is, and I won't, or don't have it in a house.
Yeah.
It is their house, so I have to respect
Yes.
that. But still, just the idea of this, like, something in here with, like, under a vase or something, that would really put me through the grinder with my brain. And that's okay. That is what it is. You mentioned in your little bio, I don't think we have to be doom and gloom the whole time.
No. Let's lift this up a little.
So, put you in your bio that you are a previous pup and pack owner.
Yeah, I had my last relationship I was in, basically had a pup, had a pack, and yeah, that for me at the time, that was something that I needed in my life, and yeah, it was a good thing. It was a good thing. It's good to be a handler, and it's good to own a pup. So people were sometimes negative about the pup thing, but I think it's a good thing for pups and things like that. It's escapism for some people, which is sometimes you need that in your life, a bit of escapism.
Yeah.
It's what Kink's about sometimes. It's to be no, Kink's not escapism, Kink's being you, whereas pup stuff sometimes can be escapism, and it's good. It's a good thing. So,
well, a lot of puppies I meet are, and now I'm making a horrible generalization because it's not everyone that's a pup that's like that, but there's a lot of neurodiversity in the pup world.
I would agree with that.
Talking to someone who is on the spectrum, I used to be a pup. Rocco comes out once in a while and sniffs a couple of boots, but I'm primarily a master or top. So for me, it's I've mentioned this on other episodes, I'm sure, but I've noticed that if I get into pup space or submissive space, my brain goes quiet, which is great.
Yeah, and I think that's why you find that, especially in the pup scene, there is a lot of neurodivergent people, because they see it as a way to turn that off and just be themselves. And to be honest, good for them. It's, if that's helping them and that's the type of thing they're into, great. Because when I was on the scene younger, there wasn't a lot of that about. It was just either you were either into leather or rubber, and that was it. Whereas Kink's evolved.
Yes,
It's evolved a lot to now, and you've got pups, there's loads of things now. So like you've got ABDL, you've got your last guy on into the clown kink. Kinks develop all the time, and as right, we're looking for the right word here, as kind of like a group of people, as a community, we should be welcoming and embracing these changes in kink, because it's what keeps it going.
There is a tendency to, and I'm trying not to alienate anyone, but there is a tendency, some people might be a little bit stuck in their ways.
Yeah.
Leather has to be a certain way, or rubber has to be a certain way.
Yeah.
If you're into leather, you have to look constipated all the time. You cannot smile. There is, and it's, I know this is a trigger word for some people, but there is a little bit of toxic masculinity.
Yes.
When we talk about hypermasculine roles. Historically, the reason we took on hypermasculine roles was in defiance.
Yes.
And also with like people who worked out a lot in, for example, the 90s, was to get away from this. People with HIV looked sickly.
Yes.
And it was just a coping mechanism. Where now people can look healthy and it's not necessarily an indication of they might be sick and they're hiding it. So I think it's important to know where things come from and why they were the way they were, but also not be scared of change.
No. And as a community, we've had a long way to come. Obviously, in the late 80s, early 90s, there was the AIDS epidemic, and that was a scary time. And as I mentioned, like, It's a Sin, that was out. I watched that when obviously COVID time. I was in bed with COVID for the first time, and I was really rough with it. It was horrible. It was horrible to have it.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm gonna watch It's a Sin, and I actually
Maybe not the best
no,
program to
I
watch.
wasn't the best program to watch at that point in time, but for me, it made me remember my life in the 80s and 90s, and I'm like, I connect so much with what went on that program at the time. I mean, yeah, in bed in like a pile of tissues in tears watching it, because I remember the kind of like the people that I had known that unfortunately are not here now. And as a community, we need to kind of like honour that they went through a really bad time. We all went through a bad time, and as a community, we tried to be tarred with. The general population tried to, oh, you're unclean. This is this. This is that. It was just an epidemic that we had to try and fight for ourselves, and we needed equality. We always need equality. We're always fighting for it because we're seen as a third class type of citizen sometimes.
Yeah, and it still happens. And we saw it in the last couple of years with monkeypox, where it was deemed a gay disease.
Yeah.
Well, the reason it didn't become a massive issue here in the UK was because, hold our drink, we're going to go and get vaccinated when everyone else didn't want to.
Exactly.
Where it's just like, we know how to safeguard ourselves, and we inform ourselves, and we do something about it. It was also like when the pandemic happened, there was a certain generation of, especially when It's a Sin came out, it's like, well, we've been through this all before.
Yeah, exactly.
We've seen the morgues be filled of people that died and stuff like that. There was I had a lot of friends where it was a lot of trauma that came up when that show came out.
Yeah.
And also with the pandemic, because it was similar but not the same, of course. It's very different.
Yeah.
But still, it was the amount of Saturdays I've sat with friends and just kind of talking them through it, through their emotions, where I'm a bit too young to really get it. I remember the 90s, and I think the thing I remember is an episode of Beverly Hills 90210 where one of the characters gets blood in this hospice care home, and no, and it's very dramatic, and there's a lot of incorrect information in that episode, but that was my first experience of it and how that might affect and so on. So it definitely put the fright of life in me. And the first time I got tested for HIV was after I'd had unprotected sex with someone with HIV. He was medicated, so the chance was very slim, but this is still before U equals U.
Yes.
So, and this was still when you had to wait 2 weeks to use salt to come back.
Yes. Sweating for 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's horrible. Now it's like prick on the finger, just like, anyway.
Yeah.
Perfect. So we are coming to the end of the episode already. Just to end on a slightly lighter note.
Yes.
What is your favorite fetish, and what was your first piece of kit you ever got?
Favorite bit of fetish? Well, I do like my skin gear. That is my favorite fetish because that's when I was younger. That's what I settled on as part of one of my main kinks. Apart from leather and rubber, skin is my fetish. Is my fetish. Is my grounding part of me. It makes me feel me. First piece of kit would have been, I'm trying to remember way back now.
Back in the Rolodex, is that
actually right? Would have been rubber from Recoil.
Oh wow, that is a bit back, yeah.
A lot
Recoil
back.
Hasn't been around for a long time.
No, it hasn't been around for a long time. Would have been my first. It would have been a pair of rubber skinhead jeans and a Recoil t-shirt.
Wow. I want to build a rubber skinhead outfit now. I'm getting a little bit more back into the skinhead gear. Mine comes in a little bit in ebbs and flows, but it was also one of the first fetishes I really got into.
Yeah.
Because it's not expensive.
No.
I think the boots are expensive if you get.
Oh yeah, boots are
DMs,
expensive.
but like getting a pair of bleach jeans and,
Mhm.
and a polo, fine. That's not the most expensive in
No.
the world. So like with the skin gear, like because times have changed, of course you will be of the generation where gay skinheads, but now in an age of political correctness,
Mhm.
how do you find navigating skinhead gear and not being called out for it being something it's not?
I totally get that. I mean, for me, it's just an image thing. It's
Mm.
what makes me feel me. And yeah, people get called out. So, oh, you're wearing white laces. You're wearing white braces. You're into white power. And it's like, no, I'm just into this. We're gays. We're coordinated. We like things to look a certain way. It's not because
Color coordinated, yeah.
Color coordination. That is it. It's like if I'm wearing bleachers and I'm wearing a black thread, I have to wear white braces, and white laces and white braces because that's what looks good. If I was wearing red, I can't wear white braces and white laces because that won't look right. I'd wear red laces and red braces. It's all a matter of color coordination, and also back to the hanky code from way back. Red for fisting, yellow for pierce. It's all about trying to signal what type of fetishes you're into.
And I fully agree on that. I think it's also very important to understand why some people might find it triggering.
Yes.
And so we should never ignore that. And there's also a history of it, but also to remind people, skinhead came out of the punk culture.
Yes.
And it's just a group of bad people that took that image on and twisted it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important. I've had this discussion with my little brother, kind of calling me out for wearing skinhead gear, and I'm just like, no, this is actually very much part of punk, ska, that kind of music, which is heavily inspired from the Caribbean, stuff like that. So it's in England, skinhead gear is not necessarily a racist thing. It can be, but it depends on who you socialize with. If you go to like Paris, don't wear skinhead gear. You will get beaten up because that is more integrated for that. So I think it's a location thing as well.
Yes.
But it's important to educate where things come from, where the inspirations come from. Also, skinhead gear looks really hot.
Yeah.
So
exactly. And that's the thing. And also I said about like the hanky code and things like that. So some people just like certain colours, like with the pups, they wear some really great outfits. And someone will go, oh, you're wearing yellow, you're into piss. And it's like, no, I just wear yellow because I like it. Wear what makes you happy.
Yeah, I think that's important, that you feel comfortable in your own skin. You're very happy with what you wear. I bought a tracksuit recently. It's one of those chilly Adidas tracksuits.
Yes.
Has that wet look. Really good. Then when I got it, I just like, oh shit, the three stripes on the side are brown. What does that signal? And one of my friends is like, it doesn't signal anything.
No, it doesn't.
It's just a look.
Yeah,
calm down.
it is. That's the thing. But
but you do think about it, especially with that
course.
specific color, which is no kink shaming, but not for me.
Yeah.
So if anyone's listened or watched this and something you've said has spoken to them, where can they get a hold of you?
Get hold of me on, well, basically I'm on Recon under LeatherAlphaSkin, on Twitter, X as LeatherAlphaSkin, but take the I out of the skin, and also LeatherAlphaSkin on Bluesky as well. So feel free.
Leaning more towards Bluesky.
Yes,
now.
Bluesky. Yeah. But yeah, don't feel embarrassed, and I'll talk to anyone. If you want to ask me a question, ask me a question. I'll give you an honest answer. I don't skirt around things and say blur this. You want to ask a question, ask me. I'll give you an honest answer.
And if there's any piece of advice you would give to someone who's starting out on the kink scene?
Don't be scared. Ask lots of questions, and don't feel like if you saw me in a room and you wanted to talk to me, come talk to me. Don't message me on an app and say, oh, I saw you standing there and I'd love to talk to you. come talk to me. And it's easier that way.
He's not as scary as he looks.
Shut up, you. But I was at a Manchester Leathermen meet, and I think it was either club locked or something. It was on downstairs, and some pups come up and stuck their head through the door, and they looked scared. And I'm like, "Come in, come in." And I got this pup to come in, rubbed his head, spoke to him, said, "Look, we don't bite. You want to know?" And that's how you get the younger generation involved. Come talk to the older generation. We will educate you. We will help you out, because that's how you learn.
Yeah, I think we have to kind of remember now, we are becoming that generation that we didn't have.
No.
Because of the AIDS epidemic.
Yes.
So all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, we are now the mentors.
Yes.
The daddies, the handlers, the sirs that kind of need to usher in the younger crowd to not hurt themselves.
Yeah.
And do it safe practices.
Answer their questions around kink. It's like, how did you, like we've done here, it's like, how did you get into kink? Why do you like this? What is involved with this? It's all about a matter of passing it on to the next generation, because then they will move, when we're long gone, they will then be the generation that passes it on to the next generation. And it's all about education. Educate people. If you don't share, it doesn't get passed on.
Thank you very much for coming on, Mark.
That's okay.
It's been
Thank you.
Absolute joy.
Good.
Just to end the episode, if anything we've talked about today, which has been heavy subjects, has affected you in any way, don't sit with it. Talk to your nearest and dearest about it, or professionals that might help you, because these subjects are quite tough, and we have talked about death today and mishaps in play. So that's really important. Don't sit with it. Or Mark is also welcome to talk to you.
Message. It's all about talking, and they say talking helps, and believe me, it does. It does help.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
And that was this week's episode. Thank you for tuning in or listening in. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Go out and have lots and lots of fun. Safe practices. Very important to take away from this episode. Don't do breath play on your own. I think that's important to reiterate at the end of this episode. But go and have fun. Be sleazy. Be kinky. Enjoy your kink, whatever it is. Bye.
Bye.